Hi guys, it's Shime and welcome back to my channel, and today we are back with volume 9, sorry about that, of ErHa, otherwise known as Husky and his white cat Shizun. That is not correct, but basically, more or less. So sorry for the delay in starting up the stream. I remembered and realized that it's probably a little bit naive of me to start another volume of ErHa without tissues. So we have it. I really hope we don't need it in the first live stream, but we have it just in case. Hi. And I need to disclaim this just a little bit because I was talking to Kictor a while back and she said that she had bawled her eyes out while reading this volume and she doesn't usually cry. Now imagine me, who cries over the simplest, stupidest thing, and the fact that I was a wreck at the end of the previous volume. So I don't know how I'm gonna be handling this. If I have to be honest, there's a legit chance, depending on how this live stream goes, that the rest of the streams might not be streams and might need to be pre-recorded videos. Cause frankly I was a little bit of a blubbering mess at the end of the previous volume, and I don't know how much of that was tolerable. So just for like my own sanity, I might genuinely need to not have this volume be a live stream. We will see. We will see how I feel, if I can cope, and we will see if I can manage 3 hours. It doesn't sound promising, but we'll see how I go, how I do, if I survive. I want to set you guys' expectations for this volume as low as possible because frankly I'm terrified. We'll see. Anyway, I have it here with me. It is, as always, gorgeous. I love the color. Blue is definitely one of my preferred colors, if you couldn't tell. And this is beautiful, but it also looks like Shime is gonna be in hell. So I'm worried. I think I've delayed as much as I possibly can. We have the pillows. I will probably be favoring this one. But yeah, I'm scared, but let's just get going because I can't just keep putting this off. I already do have volume 9 as well, but considering what I've heard, we are still interjecting the final volume of Disabled Tyrant's Beloved Pet Fish in between volume 8 and 9, just for my mental health, especially after this week. Because this past week was something. Anyway, okay. So, for anyone who does not have this, just look at that. I know we see it as the thumbnail for this, but I always just appreciate that this artist posts the clean, shall we say, the clean version of the artwork on their Twitter. And we're skipping right past the other thing because I don't want to see any spoilers. And for anyone who needs a recap, you can try and stomach the live streams, but we ended with basically a rape scene between Moran and Chuaning, and it broke my heart. Okay, chapter 244, Snake Shed. Okay, the cultivators who had escaped Mount Jiao with their lives fled to Guiye to recuperate. With the medicine sect's disciples' help, they extracted would-be nuns, hard tunneler insects, and bandaged their many wounds. The fog of dejection, however, proved harder to treat than any injury. The air itself seemed heavy and lifeless. Shimeng sat on the shore of Rainbow Isle with the scimitar Longcheng in his lap, staring blankly at the rise and fall of the tide. Footsteps sounded behind him, and he whipped around, eyes wide and filled with earnest hope. Yet when he saw who it was, the light in his eyes died in an instant. He dragged his gaze back to the boundless sea. Mehan Xie took a seat next to Shimeng. Your dad received a message and had to return to Shizun Peak. He left in a hurry, so he asked me to inform you. The statement was met with silence. You and your dad seem to be in a lousy mood, Mehan Xie remarked. Since you finally noticed, feel free to get lost. Mehan Xie did nothing of the sort. He tossed a wineskin to Shimeng. Do you drink? I mean, he might start. Shimeng turned on him, furious, like a hedgehog with its claws raised. Do I drink? Like hell. I haven't fallen that far. Mehan Xie smiled. His fine golden locks curled softly in the sea breeze, and his eyes were like pale jade, twin pools of teal flecked with fallen petals. Damn, if that isn't a description. What do you mean, fallen that far? It's just a drink. Mehan Xie smoothed a wisp of fair hair behind his ear. The silver bell around his wrist tinkled softly. I heard Shizun Peak forbids its people from visiting the pleasure districts, but surely the taverns aren't off limits as well. At Shimeng's lack of response, Mehan Xie continued, I also heard Chu Xianjun adores pear blossom white wine. You're his disciple. Have you not learned to hold your drink? Shimeng glowered. His lips parted as if to curse Mehan Xie out, but he simply twisted open the wineskin and took a generous gulp. Gutsy. This liquor's from Tashia Palace. It's quite The gutsy young Master Xie sputtered mightily, face ashen, and broke into a violent fit of coughing. Mehan Xie pressed his lips together, seemingly taken aback. You really can't hold your drink? Now this Shimeng's pride could not take. He swatted Mehan Xie's hand away as he reached for the wineskin and gulped down another burning mouthful. Not a second later, he turned his head aside and spat it out with a cry. I feel like him trying to hold his liquor a second time and still failing is somehow worse than just failing the first time. Mehan Xie watched him in a rare state of bewilderment. I didn't know you. Never mind, you've had enough. Get away from me. Give me my wineskin back. Go away! Shimeng would nip at anyone who provoked him whenever he got into a temper. Glaring daggers at Mehan Xie, he snapped. How would it make me look if I started and stopped whenever he told me to? What dignity would I have left? He patted his own slightly flushed cheek, already slightly tipsy. There was a saying on Shizun Peak. Chu Zongshi could down 1,000 cups, while one was enough to bring down young Master Xie. As Mehan Xie wasn't from Shizun Peak, he naturally never heard such a thing. Otherwise, he would have known better than to pour liquor down Shimeng's throat. After Shimeng was done spitting out his second swig, he picked up the wineskin again, this time managing 4 or 5 gulps. He gasped as he surfaced for air, his face alarmingly pale. Mehan Xie snatched back the wineskin and frowned. All right, that's enough. Go home and rest. You've been sitting in this cold ocean wind for hours. I'm waiting for someone, Shimeng replied obstinately. Mehan Xie blinked. Shimeng scowled at him for a long moment before surprising them both by bursting into tears. Oh no. I mean, it's been a lot. I think it's fair if he wants to cry. You wouldn't understand. I've waited for my girl, for Shizun, for Shime. Got that? There are 4 of us, and all of us have to be here. It won't be the same if someone's missing. it came to comforting women, Mehanshir was an expert. He'd put his arm around them and utter a few sweet nothings, making some pretty promises. It always worked like a charm. He'd never needed to comfort a man before. Perhaps it was fortunate, then, that Shimong wasn't really in the need of comforting. Rather, he had bottled up his emotions for too long, and once the liquor got to his head, they surged up and broke the leaves. The levees? I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly, sorry. He wanted nothing more than to let them out. There were 4 of us, but I'm the only one left. My heart hurts. Crap. Do you understand? Manchu sighed. I do. Liar, you don't understand anything. Shimong bowed his head and wailed. He hugged Longchen tightly to his chest, a piece of driftwood to keep himself afloat. The liar didn't know how to convince him otherwise, so he agreed. Okay, you're right. I don't understand. You heartless brute. Why can't you understand? Shimong was too drunk to be reasoned with. He levelled a baleful glare at Mehanshir, through the tears pooling in his eyes. What don't you understand? It's simple. He held up his fingers. 4 of us. He put down one finger, then another. Before he got to the 3rd, he dissolved into tears again, as if that trembling finger was a lever that opened the floodgates. There's only one left. I'm the only one left. Get it now? Mehanshir didn't want to be a liar, and he didn't want to be heartless either. Since he couldn't say he understood, but he also couldn't say he didn't, he decided it was best to remain silent. Honestly, probably the wisest choice. I realized I forgot to ask if the audio is okay, but I'm assuming, since no one has commented on it, that the audio is okay. Shimon stared at him, then turned aside and vomited loudly. The famed paramour Mei Gongzi was used to people staring at him starry-eyed and besotted. Shimon was the first to stare and then throw up. Mehanshir's temples began to throb. What's your problem? When you were little, I gave you a fishment and you threw up. Now that you're grown, I gave you Kunlun wine and you threw up. You're fussier than a girl. Oh, they interacted when they were younger? That's news to me. Oh, hi. That's surprising. Okay. He watched Shumeng's hunched over figure as he heaved until he was dizzy and breathless, jade green eyes exasperated. Okay, enough cursing and puking. Go back and rest, said Mehanshir. None of them. Your Shizun, or your friend, would want to see you like this. He stood to pull Shumeng to his feet. After his spat of vomiting, Shumeng felt weak, like his feet weren't planted firmly on the ground. He didn't even try to throw off the steadying hand Mehanshir placed on his arm. Mehanshir escorted Shumeng away from the shore and through the back entrance of Guyi. He had intended to take him back to his room to rest, but before they made it through the gate to the garden pavilion, Mehanshir sensed danger. He quickly steered Shumeng behind a column in the open-air corridor. Shumeng let out a whimper of protest that was swiftly cut off by Mehanshir's hand over his mouth. Quiet. Let go of me. I'm going to throw up again. Shumeng mumbled around his fingers. Swallow it. This, at least, rendered Shumeng temporarily speechless. Still worried his intoxicated charge might stir up trouble, Mehanshir tapped a finger to Shumeng's lips and cast a muffling spell. He turned and cast a swift glance at the pavilion, only to be struck down by the sight before him. Moran? By this point, most of the sect leaders and elders had returned to their own sects. After the chaos that had unfolded on Mount Zhao, all urgently needed to reinforce their barriers protecting their respective domains, but a number of injured cultivators still remained at Guyi. These were currently gathered in the pavilion, staring at the man who appeared in their midst with looks of alarm. The scary thing now is, like, you don't know which Moran it's gonna be, you know, whether it's Tash and Jin or our Moran. Sadly, I don't think it's gonna be our Moran. That would be too simple. But also, I'm like, can these people just get a break for like 2 seconds? Clad in a long hooded cloak of black and gold, that's not our Moran. Moran surveyed his surroundings with narrowed eyes. Look at all these familiar faces. After so many years, I never thought I'd see you all standing here, alive and well. One of the cultivators screwed up their courage and bellowed, Moya, what the hell's gotten into you? Have you been cursed? What's gotten into me? Moran's thin lips curled into a sneer. This venerable one should be asking what the hell's gotten into you to speak to me like that. The crowd only saw the flash of a dark blur before blood spurted from the chest of the cultivator who yelled, splattering over the ceiling. Murderer! Moran, what are you doing? Quick, get Jungman. Someone screamed. Someone get Jungman now! Oh? Moran languidly raised his gaze. Jungman. Jiangxi? When no one dared answer, Moran continued. He's got some skill, I'll give him that. Among all the people this venerable one has killed, he was in the top 10 for sure. The hell are you talking about? Something was not right. This man was nothing like the Mo Zongshu Meihanshu knew. Rancor and malevolence radiated from every fibre of him, yet he looked and sounded exactly like Moran. How could anyone have learned to mimic his appearance and voice so precisely in such a short amount of time? One of Guyu's elders spoke up. Mo Zongshu, I'm afraid you've been cursed by the demon dragon on Mount Zhao. Please have a seat so I can check your pulse. What? Moran cut him off, eyes narrow. Stop beating around the bush, you nitwit. Are you saying there's something wrong with this venerable one? I am genuinely scared. I had thought that there would be a slight reprieve for whatever reason. But no, we might just get a repeat of the previous timeline, and I am not mentally prepared for that. I care about these people. I don't want to see this. And it also begs the question, like, what would be the point of us getting so attached to all these people through these books and then just losing them in the exact same way, or kind of even a worse way potentially than we lost them in the first version of the timeline. The elder blinked in trepidation. Since you're so eager to treat someone, this venerable one will help you out. After all, without the sick and injured, you healers would starve. Isn't that right? The cloaked figure leapt into the air like a shadow, and the pavilion was suddenly awash in scarlet. Moran landed on the burgundy Purlia-patterned carpet in the middle of the pavilion in a whirl of black robes as screams filled the air. The gathered cultivators were afflicted with a variety of gruesome injuries. Arms were hacked off, legs shattered. The most unfortunate died on the spot, their torsos ripped open in an instant. Um, we'll have to see if I can actually survive this. And I'm not saying this to be hyperbolic. had something personal happen last week that I don't feel comfortable discussing, but suffice to say this is reminding me of that, and I wasn't prepared for that. Okay, let's see how I go. Moran gazed down at the elder who had spoken, now a crumpled heap on the ground. Look, all these patients are for you, aren't you happy? More a year. Congratulations, and many happy returns. A brilliant smile unfolded over Moran's face as he stepped over the cultivators, both the ones writhing miserably and the glassy-eyed dead. Oh yes, one more thing. At the pavilion gate, he turned to look over his shoulder. This venerable one almost forgot. The upper cultivation realm has been a stinking cesspool for centuries. Pass on a message to your sect leader for me. It's only a matter of time before this venerable one raises all the sects to the ground. Moran, you coward! One of the braver survivors rasped out. You attacked a pavilion full of injured cultivators. Are you scared of fighting the other sect leaders face to face? Scared? Of them? Moran gave the man a sharp look. Even if you all held hands and formed a great big army, as long as I don't wish to die, none of you could touch a strand of hair on this venerable one's head. Moran, have you gone mad? You and Huabinan are working together. What do you want? Moran grinned, his dimples deep and his eyes distant. You're asking what this venerable one wants? He drawled, a strange look flitting across his handsome features, and he closed his eyes. Even this venerable one isn't sure what it is exactly, but suffice it to say, it's not something those left in this world can give me, nor can they hope to bring me any cheer, he said, tonelessly. For many years, this venerable one has been a dead man walking, without wants or desires. But if you insist on asking, he chuckled and looked up, irises glinting scarlet. Well then, I'd like to see you all dead. Everyone's jaws dropped. Moran swept his gaze over the crowd's ashen faces and couldn't help softly laughing. It's been ages since this venerable one's seen anything so interesting. How fun. Moran, you've truly gone mad. That's the second time you've said that. His smile twisted into a leer. There was a loud crack. In the blink of an eye, Moran had darted behind the speaker and bashed his head in. Gore splattered everywhere. Okay. Amidst the horrified screams, Moran lifted his gallant, blood-flecked face, revealing a pair of unnervingly bestial eyes. He leapt out of the crowd that chittered like panicked sparrows. This venerable one wouldn't want to make a liar out of you now. So here's some madness, just for you, good sir. This good sir had his skull shattered and his face was a torrent of blood, but Moran barely spared him a glance. He surveyed the crowd coolly, as if he just finished a perfectly unremarkable meal. All right, this venerable one's killed enough idiots today. The corner of his mouth quirked up as he shoved the corpse over and kicked it aside. It'd be a bore to get rid of everyone in one fell swoop. Besides, if all of you died, this venerable one will be lonely again. You can stick around a few more days. He paused. Next time this venerable one's feeling fidgety, I'll take it out on your skulls. The man strolled away from the mess of gore and through the main hall. At the gate, he glanced over his shoulder once more. Before then, make sure to look after your heads. He burst into laughter. With the switch of his cloak, he alighted upon the closest rooftop and vanished over the ridge. I just wonder where we go from here. I understand we're relatively close to the end of the novel, considering we're on volume 8 of 11, but it just doesn't feel like there's much point. I don't see how we beat Tashinjin and still have a world left, you know? One that has anyone that we care about in it anyway. Like at the rate he's going, he's gonna kill everyone I care about again. In the cave on Dragon Blood Mountain, Moran and Chuaning were still sound asleep, recovering from the effects of the spell on the incense burner. 3 days after those strange and gruesome events at Guiye, the censer suddenly emitted a shrill whistle. The piercing noise echoed through the cave as black smoke and crimson blood spilled forth. Moran's eyes flew open. His chest no longer ached, and he was otherwise uninjured. The mysterious tendrils of smoke that had passed between him and Chuaning was nowhere to be seen. Shizun! He shot upright. Much to his surprise, he found that a third person had joined them in the cave. The new arrival stood in front of the stone table with his back to Moran, scrutinizing the smoking censer. Even from behind, the slender figure was unspeakably lovely, a pale, elegant hand opening the lid and plucking out a densely petaled, exotic-looking flower, holding it up to examine it in the low light. I'm trying to think who the unspeakably lovely hand could belong to. Totally destroyed, he said softly. Closing his fist, he crushed the flower into dust, which immediately began to glow with a faint pearlescence. He seemed pleased as he gazed down at the light with his hands tucked behind his back. Ah, it's lucky I melded a piece of my own soul into the flower when I refined it. If not for the fragment, this cave would have been impossible to track down. The light eddied around him as though it knew he was talking about it. It grew fainter and fainter until it vanished completely. Who? Moran rasped. The man put down the censer and sighed. You're awake? Who are you? Who do you think I am? The man replied lightly. He sounded terribly familiar, but Moran was still groggy from sleep. He felt like he'd been dreaming for ages and couldn't immediately place the voice. Who could this man be? Based on what he just said, he seemed to have a connection with the mysterious black flower. Refining magical flora and insects with Guiye's specialty, so was this Wabinan? I had that thought and I was like, no, please no, we can't be dealing with him now. The moment the name crossed his mind, Moran thought of Shime and felt his chest burn with hatred. But before he could attempt an answer, the man turned round. The cave was dim, but the newcomer's face was so exquisite it seemed to light up the space. His hair, usually left loose down his back, was now bound in a high ponytail, with an embroidered ribbon tied neatly across his forehead. Below it, those peach blossom eyes gleamed as bright and clear as ever. Peach blossom? That can't be Shime. Let's just keep reading. Everything about his appearance and aura was almost unrecognizable. Not a trace of gentleness remained. Here was a beauty beyond compare, but Moran felt as though a thunderclap had gone off in his head. His voice was like an arrow piercing the silence as he sputtered in terror. Shime? Shime. It was Shime. The breathtakingly lovely man before him tucked a stray lock of hair behind his ear. Aram, are you so surprised to see me? He asked mildly. I mean, considering the last time we saw you, you blinded yourself, and I'm assuming that was this timeline's Shime, and you are a different timeline Shime, but I am thoroughly confused. Moran's mind seemed to stall as blood surged through his veins. His head buzzed. Why would Shimei suddenly show up here? Why would he behave so strangely? He was rigid with shock, his throat clogging with a flood of words. At last he tentatively managed. Your eyes. They're unharmed. With a small smile, Shimei walked towards Moran. I came here to see my beloved. Who'd like me if I were blind and ugly? Excuse you? As Shimei spoke, Moran attempted to slowly gather his wits, but his astonishment was like a storm cloud obscuring his thoughts. You, he muttered. How are you here? What about Hanlon the Sage? He felt a surge of fury. At last he understood how Shimung must have felt in a past life. There was nothing more painful than being betrayed and used by someone close to you. What about Hanlon the Sage? Oh, about him? Shimei laughed. There'll be plenty of time for me to explain later. He walked forward, step by step, until he was standing right beside Moran. After so many trials and tribulations, I'd rather have a heartfelt conversation with my beloved before I talk about Hanlon the Sage, he said with a smile. Gripped by fury and dread, Moran's face grew ashen. What kind of conversation are the two of us supposed to have? The elegant man let out a slivery laugh. Huh? He fixed his eyes softly, shadowed as if wreathed in mist, on Moran's face. The two of us? The two of us are like oil and water. Indeed, we have nothing to say to each other. I'd been denying it so hard. And I think we're about to find out that the person Shimei has been fancying all along was Chuaning. I had been in so much denial over it. I was like, no, that cannot be it. That cannot be it. And I think we're about to find out that it is indeed it. Him trailing over the ground, he stepped over to Chuaning. Before Moran could process what was happening, Shimei had extended a slender, well-proportioned hand to caress Chuaning's cheek. Moran's mind went blank. He couldn't seem to grasp what this action signified. Gazing down at Chuaning, Shimei murmured to him as if Moran wasn't there at all. That oath must have really hurt you. Poor Shizun. Then again, you'll remember your other life soon, won't you? Shimei brushed a delicate finger over Chuaning's bottom lip and narrowed his eyes. His features were as lovely as ever, but he radiated danger, like a poison wine. No harm in remembering, though. Even now, I'm not sure why you went to all that trouble you did. At least we can share strategies after you wake up. He paused and smiled. In a past lifetime, you stopped at nothing to achieve your goals and heartlessly bullied your disciple. Had anyone else tormented me so, I wouldn't be satisfied killing them 100 times over. But though you opposed me, I adore you all the same. He shot Moran a glance. then leaned down and pressed a kiss to Chuaning's cheek. Lowering his gaze, he heaved a sigh. Why did I have to fall in love with you, my dear Shizun? No! I hate it. Thanks, I hate it. Ugh. Why do we have a Moran 2.0 and then also a Shime who is a Moran 3.0? Like, do we not have enough terrible people after Chuaning and out to destroy everyone and everything? I genuinely liked Shime. I so badly wanted to be wrong about him. I kept telling myself I was just imagining things, or that, maybe it was that he was carrying a secret, but it wasn't in the way that we were thinking. I had genuinely hoped he was innocent, but maybe that there was indeed a secret that he was harboring that would make all of his actions make sense in hindsight, but be like, okay, he isn't this terrible person like we thought. What a unpleasant love triangle. My word. Okay. Let's go. Chapter 245. Love Rival. Moran stood unmoving, the shock going through him like a lightning strike. No way. No way. What was Shime saying? What was Shime doing? What the hell was going on? He was flabbergasted. It didn't seem real that Shime had just kissed Chuaning. The sight was too horrifying. He wondered if he had hallucinated it. He brought a hand to his forehead, temples throbbing. Shime's gentle smile from years ago flashed through his mind. He could almost hear him call out softly, "Aran." But the man before him, he was actually... All the hairs rose on Moran's neck. The one Shime loved was Shizun? But how? Shime had never shown any signs of having feelings for the Shizun. It would have been more believable if Shimeng had confessed he had a crush on Chuaning. How could Shime be in love with him? He was polite and respectful, and hardly ever said a word more than necessary to Chuaning, much less clung to him or sought his attention. As soon as class ended, as soon as he finished his tasks, he promptly and properly took his leave. How? Shime straightened up. He cast a glance at Moran and laughed softly. I seem to have caused someone quite a fright. You're completely crazy. Crazy? Shime's tone was conversational. My dear Shidi, you're calling me crazy? Was I the one who left Shizun in this sorry state? Moran flushed with shame, his eyes swimming with fury and bewilderment. If it had been anyone else, he would have lunged at them without holding back, but the person who stood before him now was Shiming Jing, the man he thought he had loved for 2 lifetimes. All the words he wanted to say were stuck in his throat. To be fair, it's not like I've done anything crazy, Shime continued, unabashed. For instance, pretending I returned your feelings, being nice to you for so many years. When you used Jiang Liu to interrogate me all those years ago, I even resisted the pain and lied through my teeth to say, I like you. Oh yeah, it's not like you did any of that. Okay, so we have 2 crazy cats on our hands right now. Let's not say cats, because we like cats in this house, especially cats and dumb huskies. Let's find other animals. Give me some options. But we have them. Is there any possibility that Shime and Tashi and Jun can like go at each other's throats and leave the rest of us out of it. That's too much to hope for. I think what creeps me out more is the fact that he is such a similar brand of crazy to Tashi and Jun. Whereas I would have kind of expected him to be not that. Like, not terrible. Maybe obsessive in a different way, in the way of like, I never did all of these horrible things to you. Look how good I am. You should be with me. More of that kind of energy. But no. He's very much giving, Taishinjin 2.0, and it's horrifying. He paused, eyes shining with ridicule. Be serious. If I had actually fallen in love with someone like you, with no merits beside a pretty face, I might as well gouge out my own eyes and die. Met with Moran's stunned silence, Shime asked, Why so quiet? Are you upset? His was a beauty that could topple nations. Even his sneer was a sight to behold. He shot Moran another sidelong glance before reaching out to stroke Chuaning's chin. Dizzy with rage, Moran moved to summon Jiangui, but there was only a faint scarlet flash in his palm before his spiritual energy sputtered out. Shime didn't look up. Don't waste your efforts. The past lifetime's Wanning used half his earth soul to uproot the flower for you. This plan succeeded. I'll never be able to control you again, but you'll need at least 10 days of rest before you can access your spiritual energy. Trying to fight me now would be foolish. Wait, what? You just casually dropped something that sounds very important right in there. Let's backtrack. Crazy coyote, I like that. Past life's Wanning used half his earth soul to uproot this flower for you. His plan succeeded. I'll never be able to control you again. I need to go reread the previous novel, like volume, which I do not want to do because that caused me so much pain. But I think if I were to go back and read it, I would be realizing that the person who Chuaning was talking about, the person that Chuaning was so horrified about that he felt the need to force Moran and Chuaning to rape each other to regain memories, was not, in fact, Ta Jun, but was Shimei. And so, whatever the hell he did was not just for his own self's benefit, but for this version of Moran's benefit as well. Am I making any sense? I don't know. Get Moran's man's name out of your mouth, Shimingji. Indeed. Okay, where were we? What are you calling Wanning? So you're allowed to take advantage of Shizun like this, but I'm not allowed to simply cherish him? That's hardly fair. You've had him so many times, Shimei laughed softly. It's time for me to have a turn. In truth, I do think it's rather beneath me to sleep with your second-hand goods, but I'll bear it for his sake. I cannot think of an insult bad enough that I would not feel ashamed to say that describes how I'm feeling about Shininjin right now. And yes, he is no longer Shimei. Moran had no holy weapon, yet he was so angry he started forward, fists raised. Ah, you know, there's nothing I despise more than an uncultured thug like you. Shime released Chuaning to block Moran's blows. On the dim walls of the cave, the two men's long shadows flickered and swayed like dueling dragons spitting flames. Shime had never been much of a fighter, and he knew he was no match for Moran hand to hand. A flourish of his sleeve sent several spiritual snakes slithering out to bind Moran in place. In that window of opportunity, Shime leapt aside, gathering Chuaning in his arms, and dashed towards the mouth of the cave. Oh, hell no, we are not having a kidnapped Chuaning. No, 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 no. Shizun! Moran struggled free of those cold, scaly snakes and pelted after the other two. But when he burst from the entrance, Shime already leapt into a tree, the moon bright behind him. Don't bother, he said, smiling. You're only just coming to. You wouldn't be able to catch me if you killed yourself trying. Shimingjing, why? Why are you doing this? Aran, said Shime, still smiling. Don't you know how much your sugar hates the name Shime and Shimingjing? What are we gonna call you? I can't even think. What, Tianxiangjun? Moran blinked in confusion. If you don't mind, call me by my real name from now on. What? This humble one is surnamed Hua. No courtesy name. Given name, Binan. Oh, that I did not see that coming. What? No, that feels impossible. That makes no sense. I need to go. I don't want to reread Volume 7, it hurts, but I need to go reread Volume 7. Wabinan? Seeing Moran's eyes fly wide, Shime's smile seemed to grow brighter. Oh yes. As your Shishong, I'll give you an important piece of advice. Don't go to Guyuye. Jiangshi will tear you apart. And don't try to follow me either. Be good now and go back to Shizun Peak. Moran froze, his face drained of color. What are you going to do to Shizun Peak? You're not as dumb in this lifetime after all, Shime laughed. Sugar's prepared a little surprise for you. You'll see when you get there. Moran tasted blood at the back of his throat, and his eyes burned. Whether with sorrow or rage, he couldn't have said. Shime, what are you trying to do? He bellowed. What are you plotting? Didn't you tell me Shizun Peak was your home? Didn't you tell me that you owe your life to Uncle? Didn't you tell me we're the most important people in your world? I mean, we've established he's a liar. By the end, his voice was shaking, hands balled into fists, nails sinking deep into his palms. Were you lying this whole time? All these years? In 2 lifetimes? Moran's voice caught, a bitter cold seeping into his bones. Have you been scheming all along? For 2 whole lifetimes? Shime said nothing. His wide sleeves sputtered as he stood high in the tree, gazing down at Moran, with a faint smile touching his lips. With his peach blossom eyes curved into gentle crescents and his daintily pointed chin, he looked like a fox spirit amidst the mist-filled mountains. You. The words rattled between Moran's teeth. His thoughts were a hopeless tangle, his eyes wide with desperation. Shime, say something. The man had once consoled Moran beneath the candlelight. They had later spent so much time together they'd become inseparable. Say something. Ever since Moran had first met him as a delicate youth, elegant as jade, until the moment he laid in Moran's arms in the snow under the heavenly rift, he told Moran, Don't hold grudges, don't blame Shizun. Yeah, it just doesn't make sense to me. Moran was on the verge of shattering, but you died. I saw it with my own eyes. I brought your body back to Shizun Peak. You can't be Shime. How could this be possible? Because you're stupid. That refined voice answered at last, dripping disdain. You imbecile. Only ever cared about developing your spiritual cause and never took the medicinal arts seriously. You, the sect leader, even our wise Shizun. Shime laughed. I misspoke. Shizun isn't an imbecile, but people like you have never shown proper regard for elixirs. Elixirs? Moran mumbled. It's difficult indeed to bring a dead person back to life, Shime explained. There are plenty of ways to make a living person appear dead. You're gonna have to sell this to me a little bit harder. Had Moran's mind been clear, he would have noticed the gaping hole in Shime's story. Even if a substance existed that could simulate someone's death, Moran had stood guard in Frost Sky Hall for a full 7 days in the past life, then watched as Shime was lowered into the grave. He had been laid to rest within 3 nested coffins, each sealed with longevity nails, then buried beneath a thick layer of dirt. How could any living person escape such a grave by himself without attracting attention? There was only 2 possibilities. 1, Shime was lying. Or 2, that someone in the past life had snuck into Shizun Peak's graveyard, opened Shime's grave, and let him out after reversing the effects of the drug. We have a different person who might betray us whom we need to worry about. I hope Shime is just lying. I hope he's just lying. I can't stand another person betraying us. I'm crocheting and my movements are getting more and more frustrated. Yeah, no, I can imagine that the emotions are being channeled via your crocheting. I don't know. But Moran was a complete mess. An invisible hand seemed to have scrambled his vital organs. He hadn't the strength to consider these details. When he heard Shime's words, that bloodless, lifeless face swam before his eyes once more. Shiming Jing had perished in the flying snow. From that day forward, Moran had felt nothing but hatred, towards himself for being weak and helpless, and towards Chuaning for standing aside and doing nothing. From then on, he'd stepped into the abyss, falling into darkness. How was he to know that it was fake? It was all fake. On behalf of someone who'd faked his death, Moran had spent the second half of his life as a madman, sinking into mindless obsession. He'd wrought carnage across the land and brought about the death of the man who'd loved him more than anyone. Absurd. It was utterly absurd. Rage and anguish stabbed through him, his scalp prickling and his pupils contracting. How can you live with yourself? He roared savagely. Oh, I have no trouble with that, Shime said with a smile. How can you live with yourself, Emperor Tashinjin? These words might as well have grabbed Moran by the throat. No matter the reason you had for picking up the knife, whether out of resentment or unhappiness, your hands are covered in blood. And yours isn't? Like, I'm not saying that... sorry, I heard someone drop something, but I think it was just a remote. I'm not saying that, like, he had any direct... No, he did. He did. I was about to be like, no, he didn't have any direct blood on his hand. but the fact that he withheld knowledge from Moran, and like actively erased his memories at certain points, which allowed Ta Xinjun and his posse to do what they wanted to do, um, put blood on his hands. But even then, a lot of the people on Mount Zhao's deaths were because of Shime. So yeah, no, he has no room to talk at all. Okay, we are into the first hour. 1, 2, 3, 4. We have 4 pages left, so I'm gonna go a little bit past the hour just to finish up the chapter, and then we'll take the break. Shimei tightened his hold on the unconscious Chuaning as if flaunting his spoils of war. Do you really think the blood-soaked hands of the Emperor Ta Xinjun are fit to hold those of the immaculate Baidu immortal? Then you should let go as well. The last bit of color drained from Moran's face. Shimei knew his weaknesses exactly, injecting venom into tender flesh like the sting of a scorpion. He narrowed his eyes dangerously, his gaze finely honed. Don't tell me you think you're worthy. Wouldn't you agree that you're too dirty, you thief? The wind stirred the branches, and the lambent moon emerged from behind the clouds. Shimei's smile never faltered, but every word drew blood like a sharp blade. Ta Xinjun, every day you ever spent with him was stolen. You know better than anyone what scum you are. Truly, I don't need to elaborate. Moran's lips were grey. Rage, sorrow, fear, regrets, guilt, unbearable grief. No one could contain so many emotions without succumbing to insanity. Well, that's enough. Shimei heaved a long-suffering sigh. What's the point? Did you really think spending a few years as Mo Zongshi, saving a couple of lives, would be enough to write off all your sins? Staring at Moran's face, he laughed softly. Please. Moran couldn't speak. Shizun has his memories from the past life now. He'll remember everything. All the monstrous things you did, the people you killed, the cities you slaughtered. He'll remember how you wronged him, how you destroyed the sect. He'll remember all the ways you broke his heart. Shimei paused, scrutinizing Moran's expression. Mo Zongshi, it's time to lower your head, he grinned. Might as well confess your crimes now and be done with it. Lower your head. Confess your crimes. A lifetime of madness, of untold savagery, none of it justified. Moran's throat bobbed. He fixed scarlet eyes on the man in the tree, but as soon as he caught sight of Chuaning, limp in his arms, an uncontrollable anguish welled up in him. His gaze shrank back and withered like a dry blade of grass. He jerked his head aside. Look, I'm not saying that Moran is perfect by any means. Like, he is more or less the furthest you can get from it, but he's made some strides towards trying to be better. But at this point, it's just rather the devil I know than the devil I don't. And right now, Shimei is the devil I don't know and don't trust to not rape Chuaning as well. And unfortunately, if he were to do that, in his case, it would not be both parties being unwilling, which is the only thing that is making the situation between Chuaning and Moran marginally more bearable, is because I know that this version of Moran didn't willingly do that to Chuaning. This is such a... Think about it. Once he wakes up and realizes how long you've been lying to him, how angry will he be? Shime stroked Chuaning's face, running a delicate finger over the corner of his mouth. You know Shizun's temper. Do you imagine he'll forgive you? Shime spoke with deliberate malice, and Moran felt like he'd fallen into an icy crevasse. Forgive him? Moran's wishes had never been extravagant, yet he'd always hoped his trial might never come. He never dared to think what this day might be like when it arrived. He squeezed his eyes shut, lashes quivering. Shime's voice was cool and ethereal over the hazy peaks and valleys, like a deity commanding a mortal to seek repentance. Give up and go back to Shizun Peak. When you get there, you'll find the surprise I've left for you. I'm terrified, especially considering we know what the next volume's cover looks like, and it does not look pleasant for Shimon and his parents. His words seemed to swirl around Moran and echo in his ears. Try to enjoy it. Don't put up too much of a fight. Then, as if something else had occurred to him, Shime paused, fixing his peach blossom eyes on Moran standing below. Besides, Aran, the two of us are not the same. You can never understand what I want. His tone was mild, no different than when he'd asked Moran if the wontons were good, if there was enough chili oil. I'm not as ruthless as you are. I wouldn't hurt my friends so rashly. But Shime let his voice trail off. Moran's head jerked up. What are you going to do? Seeing Moran's gaze flit over Chuaning again, Shime laughed. Don't worry, I'll look after Shizun. I'd never hurt him. I know better than you how to cherish someone as pure and pristine as him. Every word was soaked in syrupy sweetness. Moran trembled from head to toe. If he'd had his spiritual energy, he would have long since torn Shime limb from limb, but his spiritual energy was depleted, and Shime knew he could do whatever he pleased. Shime snickered. But as for my sect mates at Shizun Peak, aunt and uncle, and the young master, eyes gleaming, he said carefully, if you don't deal with my supplies properly, I fear you'll bring about their deaths a second time. Consider this. If Shizun wakes up and finds out that you let everyone die, that you put yourself first again, do you think he'll even spare you another glance? I hate this so much. Could we not have had a pleasant surprise where Shime was concerned? Did everything ever have to have the worst possible outcome? You know, MXTX has her fair share of emotional pain, but even in the darkest moments, I feel like she still gives us just like a ray of light to hold on to. I'm struggling to find that ray of light right now. I don't know if Meat Bun is as kind. Okay, so we are. I didn't even check which chapter we're on. 246. I have not checked the chapter title yet because I don't want my thoughts to spiral while I'm getting new tea. And Moran woke up and there was Chuaning smiling. They lived happily ever after at the end. I like that. Yes, let's do that. So I will be back at 20 past-ish. And then we will see if I feel up for 2 hours more of this or just the one. Because honestly, this is already testing my limits just a little bit. Anyway, I will see you guys again in 10 minutes. Okay, we should be back. Okay, so I noticed we still have disabled Tiny's beloved pet fish art for the breaks. I will fix that so that we are back to ErHa during the next break. But I'm very nervous because generally the how should I put this? The first few chapters will set the tone for the rest of the volume, and the first few chapters do not have a happy tone, and we knew this. This does not look like a happy book, but I still had some hope that maybe it wouldn't be all sad. I feel like the brightest spot right now was just Mehanshu having to deal with a drunk Shimeng, which is not even that happy because he was experiencing a lot of drunken sadness. Okay, let's get going and see how much I can survive. I don't like this chapter title. Chapter 246, Bondage. I don't think it's the fun kind. Shimingjing ran seethed, eyes blazing. Shime's sleeves fluttered gracefully in the moonlight. Perched in that tree, his handsome features were... I think that's a spelling error. I think it should be lined in silver. Time to go, before Shizun wakes up. If he sees us fighting, he won't be happy. After a moment, he added with a smile. Oh right, next time we meet, Aran, remember to call me Huabinan. Shigong would also do, if there is a next time, that is. With that, Shime leapt nimbly into the air and vanished into the dense forest of Dragonblood Mountain. All that lingered was his lovely, chilling laughter, trailing behind him like a glittering web of gossamer. Shime! Shimingjing! He didn't turn to look back at Moran between the branches and the mist. Holding Chuaning in his arms, he flew swiftly through the craggy landscape, cloak whipping behind him and robes floating on the wind. His eyes shone as an indescribable satisfaction flooded his chest. He was like a hunter returning home, laden with his spoils and awaiting his victorious feast. Yet as he leapt from the ground, he heard the man in his arms, besieged by the nightmares of another life, murmur hoarsely, Moran. Oh! I don't like that. Okay, so I didn't notice this, but there is a note where was it? Shigong, which the footnote is husband of one's Shizun, which makes sense. The whole Shigong thing, as opposed to Laogong. But I have tea. Let's go. I also have tea. I do not want to go. Okay. Shime's smile stiffened. He lowered his lashes, his ardent gaze turning cool. Why would you go to such lengths for his sake? What's so great about him? Chuaning couldn't hear. He was burning up with fever, his handsome face pale, his eyes bluish veins visible beneath his skin. Moran, he mumbled once more. Shime jerked to a stop. After holding himself back for so long, his eagerness and impatience were also almost overwhelming. Yet after a moment's struggle, he again managed to restrain himself. Before the unconscious Chuaning, he was not nearly as cavalier as he'd been in front of Moran. Staring down at Chuaning's face, he eventually said, Stop reminiscing. Soon Moran will be gone forever. In the future, you can keep me company instead. After a pause, he continued, I know your feelings for him run deep. It's all right if you can't forget him yet. Once my plans come to fruition and I can give you my full attention, you'll come around. Ooh! Oh. Why is that so like the negative font of Moran's approach to Chuaning, if that makes sense? Like, not Moran, Tashin Jin's approach to Chuaning. Like, it's him, but a reflection of him, and not the real thing. The inverted. That was the word I was looking for. Okay. Um. Again, Shime flew skyward. Summoning his sword mid-leap, he sped towards the hero's tomb on Mount Zhao. The hour was late. In the silent burial grounds of Rufeng sect, the moonlight fell upon row after row of gravestones. Shishuanglin's Zhenlong chess pieces, no longer animated by spiritual energy, stood stiffly in place, never to move again. Shime opened the doors on Mount Zhao with the Nangong blood he'd collected in a vial. Glancing about, he spotted Nangong Liu wool gathering on a small hill. Nangong Liu wasn't a complete pawn. He still retained some of his original personality, but his faculties of reason were gone. At best, he had the mind of a 5-year-old child. Shimei had no plans to kill him. On the contrary, he thought the man might still prove useful. Oh, I hate that. I hate that. I would rather you shoot yourself in the foot and kill him now. As much as I'm tired of seeing everyone die. Dear friend Gugu, you're back. Nangong Liu broke into a sunny grin when he saw Shimei, his portly features seeming to glow with genuine delight. Since Shuanglin had considered Shimingjing his dear friend, Nangong Liu had followed his lead, resulting in this childish moniker. How did he and Shuanglin connect? That still doesn't make sense to me, but sure. Hmm. Shimei hesitated slightly, narrowing his eyes. Don't call me that. Uh, Nangong Liu was taken aback. You don't like it? I don't. Call me Huabinan. Shimei said suddenly. Come, walk with me and help me open the doors. Where does dear friend Gogo wish to go? Shimei eyed him. Perhaps there was no point in bickering with someone who was mentally little better than a toddler. Take me to the hidden chamber where Shishuanglin used to live, he answered impatiently. Nangong Liu readily obliged. Shimei knew how to get to the hidden chamber, but there were many barriers along the way that required the blood of a Nangong to pass. It was a hassle getting the little vial of blood out each time with Chuaning in his arms. Much simpler to let Nangong Liu take the lead. After walking ahead of Shimei for some time, Nangong Liu suddenly turned round, apparently overcome by curiosity. Dear friend Gugu, are you having a sleepover with your friend? Oh, why is this hurting so much? Also, my biggest fear at this point is that the surprise that Shimei has planned for Moran at Session Peak is that Tashin Jun is gonna destroy Session Peak, because then Shimei can be like, oh, it wasn't my doing, it was all a monster of your own making that is my surprise to you. That's on, that kind of thing. A sleepover? As if pleased by the word, Shimei's expression relaxed into a smile. More or less, yes. But he'll spend many, many nights here in the future. You could say he'll be living here. he better not just end up a captive once more. Like, can Chuaning not be left alone? Nangong Liu's curiosity was further piqued. Who is he? Shime considered the question, then laughed. You really want to know? I'm afraid it's not appropriate for a child's ears. You could just say Shizun. That's totally up to you, but Nangong Liu's eyes grew round, the naive expression on his middle-aged face at once comical and mildly revolting. Sorry. They arrived at the chamber and opened the door. The room inside was simply furnished, lit with their ever-bright lanterns. A bed stood against one wall, spread with a thick tiger's pelt beneath a snow silk canopy. The only other items were a small table and a harp beside the bed. Shime settled Chuaning upon the bed, then took a seat on the edge of the mattress, gazing intently at Shizun's face. The bright glow of the lanterns fell over Chuaning's familiar features. When he was awake, those sword-straight brows drew sharply down from his temples, and those phoenix eyes were proud and steely. Yet now his features held a weariness, the curve of his jaw like a tendril of smoke from a dying embers. But Shime didn't mind. Far more important was that, after 2 lifetimes of toil, both Chuaning and Moran had fallen before his schemes. At that very moment, Chuaning was lying next to him, and Moran had lost his spiritual energy and was about to obediently walk into the trap Shime had laid. His plans were all about to succeed. Oh, I so hope he is proven wrong. But unfortunately, Moran is not the right person to thwart Shime's plans. I just don't know who else there is. Eh? Nangong Liu piped up, shattering Shime's reverie. He looks so familiar. Shime shot him a sidelong glance. Do you remember who he is? Remember? This Gogo once scolded you, Shime prompted. He embarrassed you. Huh? Where? In the main hall of Rufeng Sect. Ah, really? Nangong Liu exclaimed in surprise. Why don't I remember it at all? Shime was silent for a moment, then smiled gently. It's better that you don't. The implication went completely over Nangong Liu's head. He gazed at Chuaning for a long while, head cocked, and then pronounced, He's so handsome, though, even when his eyes are closed and he's not smiling. His Emperor Tashin Jin's favorite consort, Shime replied cheerfully. How could he be anything but handsome? Favorite consort? What does that mean? Shime's eyes danced with amusement. You'll understand when you grow up. Go pick some tangerines for me and heat up some water. Knowing his temper, he'll be furious if there's nothing good to eat when he wakes up. It's so funny seeing Chuaning from this Shime's perspective, as opposed to how I would have expected him to see Chuaning. Where he seems to not understand Chuaning at all. The idea that Chuaning would wake up after something so traumatizing and the first thing he would be mad about would be food. Now, obviously, he could be being facetious, but it's not reading that way to me. Nangong Liu went to the door, only to pause on the threshold. What's wrong? Shime asked. The tangerines. Nangong Liu hesitated, biting down on his finger. Dear friend Gogo, do you know when His Majesty is coming back? He was referring, of course, to Xu Shuanglin. Shime had no plans to tell Nangong Liu that Xu Shuanglin was dead. Just be good and listen to me for now, he said with a smile. His Majesty will be back very soon. Nangong Liu's eyes lit up at once. Slinging a little bamboo basket over his shoulders, He left the chamber to pick tangerines. Shime gazed at the closed door. After a moment he laughed. Interesting. When he had his wits about him, he despised his brother, but now he's filled with brotherly affection. Just goes to show it's only kids who are pure. Once they grow older and begin to scheme and vie for power, they'll all become filthy. You say as if Shimeng does not exist. This man is gonna test my patience. He turned towards Chuaning and caressed his cheek. See, the cultivation realm is full of people like this. They are not worthy of your protection. His fingertips traced over that handsome visage? I think that's how you say it. And he sighed. Why did you suffer so much for those people? Why did you toil endlessly? Fracture your souls, rip open space and time, endure untold humiliation. Why did you battle me for 2 lifetimes, all for their sake? Battle me? We're in Chuaning's perspective, at least in this timeline. And there was never a hint that he suspected Shime of something. Granted, that could have been different in the other timeline, but there's no reason to suspect that it would be. Not the one that our Moran comes from. But I can't quite definitively say that this is all just Shime's own sense of self-importance rather than a literal meaning. Chuaning, still fast asleep, did not answer. He was tormented by the anguish and nightmares of the past life, his cheeks burning, brows tightly furrowed. Shime watched him with his chin in his hand. After a time, he took out a silver bottle of tapir fragrance dew from his Qiankun pouch. Drink some of this. Shime uncapped the bottle. I was certain you'd dream of the past lifetime. Back then, at Shenyang Pavilion, I knew you would come, so I instructed the auctioneers to bring out the tapir fragrance dew. I merely wanted to soothe your discomfort without raising suspicion. See? Isn't it nicer to be with me than Moran? As long as you make me happy, I'll let you enjoy little trifles like this every day. What can he give you? He only knows how to knock people around. He poured the sweet-smelling dew into the small porcelain bowl, then brought it to Chuaning's lips and watched him swallow. Shime gazed at his war prize for a while, entranced. An idea occurred to him, and his eyes brightened. He rummaged around in his Qiankun pouch and pulled out a pitch-black silk ribbon. He tied it around Chuaning's head and secured it with a binding spell so that his eyes were completely covered. I hate this. 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 He slowly rose. Grasping Chuaning's straw, he examined his face with an air of satisfaction. Beautiful indeed. No wonder Moran liked to look at you tied up like this in the past life. I don't mind following his example from time to time. I admit he's got taste when it comes to such things. How does this man know? How does Shime know everything that happened in the past lifetime when he was supposed to be dead? Are you telling me he was just watching all of this from somewhere and hearing all the rumors because he was technically alive in that timeline? It was just that no one knew about it, and yet he somehow never faced Tai Jun to save Chuaning, who he claims to love so much. Something is not adding up to me. Shime's smile was as sweet as ever. His fingers trailed from Chuaning's chin up to his lips, then to the bridge of his nose, finally landing on that black ribbon over his eyes. "Shizun, wake up soon, won't you?" he said softly, his tone chillingly tender. "I just thought of a fun game. Once you're awake, we can play together, okay?" I hate this so much, because I had naively thought this person was Shime. Not the creepy person, this person with the frickin' mask. Well, not mask, but eye cover, ribbon. Words are hard. But no. No, we could not let Chuaning rest for a second. Of course, this has to be Chuaning. I am terrified. I am honestly terrified because if there's one thing that Meat Bun has proven, it's that she does not mind torturing her characters. She does not hold back, which means nothing is off limits. I just can't believe we have to deal with both Tashi and Jun and a villainous Shime at the same time. Okay. I'm gonna do one more chapter and see how I feel. Because as much as the gore is bad, this kind of psychological torment I think is worse for me, which does not bode well for my attempt to want to read the Case File Compendium series, because I have heard that is mostly this just psychological torture, and apparently I can't even speak right now. But yeah, okay. Chapter 247, Beauty. Chuaning thought he was lying on a bed somewhere, his head heavy. At times, his awareness would clear, only to soon grow hazy again. He had seemed to hear two people arguing. It sounded like Shime and Moran. Then their voices faded, and his ears were filled with the whistling of the wind. Later, he seemed to be lying under a warm blanket as someone spoke to him. Their fragmented voice sounded like it was coming to him across a vast ocean. He made out one word here, another and another there, something about a past life and a Shizun. He thought this person too sounded like Shime, but he had no energy to ponder it further. Their speech quickly dissolved into nothingness, like morning mist. Slowly, his memories filled out and sharpened. His recollections of the past lifetimes swelled like rainwater, flowing into a river, ultimately rushing into the sea. The first place he dreamed of was a long, shady veranda on Shizun Peak, behind the Red Lotus Pavilion. Flowering wisteria vines wound over the roof of the corridor, their fragrant petals falling like snow whenever the wind rose. He was sitting under the awning, writing letters at a stone table. They were letters he had no way of sending. Emperor Tashinjin didn't permit him contact with anyone outside the palace, nor was he allowed to keep pigeons or any other animals. The Red Lotus Pavilion was enchanted with countless alarm sigils to ward off any possible escape. Yet Chuaning continued to write. It was a lonely existence. In this corner of the world, there was only him, and he'd probably live out the rest of his days the same way. To say it wasn't depressing would be a lie. He addressed his letter to Shimon, There wasn't much to write. He asked about recent happenings, whether Shimon was well, about circumstances on the outside, how his old friends were doing. Although, to be fair, Chuaning really didn't have any old friends left. He wrote slowly, over the course of an afternoon, but the content of his letter amounted to nothing much. Towards the end, his mind began to wander. He found himself reminiscing about the peaceful days when he had 3 little disciples by his side. How he'd once taught them to hold a brush, to write poetry, and to paint. Shimon and Shime were both quick studies, but Moran would still make mistakes after practicing a character 3 or 4 times. Chuaning had needed to guide his hand with his own to teach him properly. What did they say? What did they write back then? As Chuaning sat lost in thought, his hand moved, and the ink flowed from his brush onto the fine writing paper. First he wrote, "The body is the tree of enlightenment. The heart is the bright mirror's stand." That's 1 footnote. Then the lives of mortals have no roots, floating about like dust on the road, and that's another one. So, firstly, it's first attributed to the Tang Dynasty Buddhist leader Yuqian Shengxie, and then the second footnote was from the first poem in a collection called 12 Miscellaneous Poems by Tao Yuan Ming, a poet from the 6th Dynasty's period. Oh, okay. Hey, sorry, I missed your messages. We started volume 8. We're questioning whether we're surviving volume 8 so far. I missed the last few lives, so I didn't know, but I was like, I should stop by. Hi. Oh. Okay. Regardless of what he wrote, his characters were crisp and carefully composed. He wanted to ensure those reading would be able to understand. He didn't want to set a bad example for his disciples. His handwriting resembled his person, straight-backed and proud. He wrote, "I know not where those dear to me remain," and "The seas are vast, the mountains distant." So that note is 2 verses from the poem Jade Butterfly by the Song Dynasty poet Liu Yong. The wisteria vines trembled in the wind, their petals landing on the paper. He didn't have the heart to brush them away. Gazing at those lovely scraps of pale purple, his brush moved again. As late spring sheds the color of Haitang, I remember the bygone warmth of gentle rain. This footnote is a verse from the poem Chariot Journey by the Southern Song Dynasty poet Fan Chengda. The words rose and fell under his brush as the meter ebbed and flowed. If I were a star and you were a moon, we would shine together every night. Oh, okay, I assumed that the footnote that I just read to you was in relation to "At late spring sheds the color of Haitang," but it might be the first of 2 halves, because the 5th footnote is actually attributed to "If I were a star and you were a moon, we could shine together every night," which is beautiful. Shime I hate with everything in my soul, and I wish we could just get the nice Shime of my naive hopes back. Where were we? As he wrote, his gaze unconsciously softened as if he returned to the serenity of yesteryear. The wind picked up again, rustling his papers. The pages he hadn't weighed down flew into the air and scattered across the ground, dappled with afternoon sunlight. Chuaning sat down, his brush inside. He knelt to collect the papers containing his letters and verses of poetry. The pages had landed on the grass and steps, drifting over the fallen petals and withered twigs. He was about to reach for one among the scattered flowers when a strong, slender hand reached out and grabbed it first. "What are you writing?" Caught off guard, Chuaning straightened. Before him stood a tall, handsome man, Emperor Shizun. "What were you?" "Had at some point made his way into the pavilion." "Nothing," said Chuaning after a pause. Moran was dressed in luxurious robes of black and gold and wore a 9-tasseled crown. On one of his pale, elegant fingers sat a dragon scale ring. He had apparently just returned from court. Moran glanced coolly at Chuaning, then shook out the fine writing paper in his hand and scanned it. His eyes narrowed. "I hope you may greet these words with a smile, for writing is akin to reunion." After a beat of silence, he looked up. "What does this mean?" "Nothing really." Chuaning reached for the letter, but before he could take it, Moran blocked him. "Oh, no, you don't," Moran said. "What are you getting all anxious for?" He looked down and read a few more lines, then said dryly, "Oh, you're writing to Shimon." "I was only writing out of idleness." Chuaning didn't wish to implicate anyone else. "I wasn't planning to send it." Moran snorted derisively. "You couldn't even if you wanted to." There was nothing for Chuaning to say. He turned to tidy away the ink and paper on the table. To his surprise, Shizun followed him. With a snap of his black and golden sleeve, he slapped a hand over the page Chuaning was about to pick up. Chuaning looked up, his phoenix eyes fixed on Shizun's frowning face. He hesitated, then thought, "Forget it. Let him have it if he wants." Chuaning reached for another piece of paper, only for Moran to pin that one in place too. Moran continued confiscating all the pages Chuaning tried to take, until Chuaning ran out of patience. Unable to guess what lay behind Moran's bizarre antics, he lifted his lashes and said through gritted teeth, "What do you want?" "I hope you may greet these words with a smile. Writing is akin to reuniting." "What does it mean?" Moran stared at him, eyes dark, then lips parted slightly in expectation. "Explain." Beneath the scattered light and shadow, as the blossoms of the leaves swayed gently on the vines, Chuaning couldn't help but recall Moran as he had been years ago, when he'd just become his disciple. Moran had smiled and spoken so softly back then, asking him deferentially, "Shizun, what does the body is the tree of enlightenment, the heart is the bright mirror's stand mean? Shizun, could you teach me?" In comparison, the present Shizun's brisk manner sent a twinge of pain through Chuaning's chest. He let his head fall and closed his eyes without answering. Chuaning's silence served to further dampen Shizun's mood. He lifted page after page from the table, his eyes narrowing dangerously as he read on. This man, who'd come up with reigning titles that sounded like the year of cock, muttered to himself, exhausting all his wits as he peered at the words on the paper. At last, glum, he swept all the letters off the table onto the ground and looked up coldly. "Chuaning, you miss him." "I do not." Chuaning had no interest in bickering with Shizun and turned on his heel to leave. Before he could take a single step, he felt a hand yank his sleeve and another snap viciously around his chin. The world spun before his eyes. When it righted itself, his back was flat against the stone table. Moran's grip was so strong and unrelenting that bruises were already purpling across Chuaning's cheeks. Sunlight glimmered through the vines and into Chuaning's eyes, which reflected Tashin Jun's distorted face. His features were handsome, bone-pale and sparkling with heat. Emperor Tashin Jun knew not the meaning of shame. He began to pull at Chuaning's ropes right out in the open. For him to pin Chuaning against the table could mean any number of things, but this forceful disrobing narrowed the possibilities to one. Oi. Oh. Hi, welcome if you're here and suffering with us. Let's just take a moment to appreciate the art, because even though the actions behind the art are not beautiful, the art itself is. I kind of hate it, but it's still beautiful. Oh, that was not properly presented, my bad, sorry. There we go, I hope that's better. Okay. Chuaning's humiliation made him furious. Moye, he yelled. The rage and despair in his voice did nothing to quell the fire in Moran's loins. On the contrary, they were like a ladle full of hot oil that sent the flames roaring higher. When Moran entered him, Chuaning only felt a searing pain. He refused to cling to Moran's back. He could only grip the edge of the table with spasming fingers, gasping roughly for breath. You beast. Moran's eyes seemed shrouded in bloody mist. He was unfazed at being called a beast, only leering down at Chuaning. Fine, don't explain those words, he said. This venerable one shouldn't have asked you anyway. You're no longer this venerable one's Shizun these days. Not by any measure. His movements were quick and harsh. He chased his own pleasure with single-minded focus, sparing not a thought for Chuaning's comfort. What does one name amount to these days? He gritted out. You're just a consort, another piece of my personal property. Thanks for the reminder that we hate Tashin Jun just as much as we're probably gonna hate Shime by the end of this. Spread your legs a little wider for this venerable one. After a time, Moran flipped him onto his stomach, papers and ink tumbling from the table and brushes scattering to the ground. Pinned against the tabletop, Chuaning's body throbbed with agony, and his eyes were filled with boundless chaos. He looked at these verses before him. Oh, yeah. Yeah. The all caps, I do struggle to read them. Not because I have dyslexia or anything like that, though I know that some people with dyslexia do struggle with it. But yeah, they are a bit harder to read from far away. Thank you. I was silly and filmed something where I was like, I think I need to wear a little bit more makeup for this thing that I'm filming, and that might turn out to be a bad decision if I end up crying in this live stream. We shall see. Okay, on we go. The body is the tree of enlightenment. The heart is the bright mirror's stand. I know not where those dear to me remain. The seas are vast, the mountains distant. The words were like a condemnation. He saw Moran as a youth, smiling at him, his dark lashes fluttering like a butterfly pea blossom stained black with ink. But all he heard was Tashin Jun's low pants as he defiled him, gasping. Chuaning? Does this venerable one's consort Chu have someone else in his heart? What is this about? If I were a star and you were a moon, we would shine together every night. Moran's voice was full with lethal menace. Did you think I wouldn't understand this? Chuaning gritted his teeth, splayed on the stone of the table. His flesh was bitten and pinched, red marks blooming across his skin, but his phoenix eyes were stubborn. You don't understand. He knew voicing any contradiction would worsen his predicament, but he still stubbornly insisted. You don't understand. That part was thought, not said. You don't understand what it means to have people dear to you. You don't understand why the seas are vast, why the mountains are distant. You don't understand who's the star and who's the moon. You wouldn't be able to understand. Again, all thought. Eventually, that absurd entanglement came to its end, and Moran released him. Chuaning's robes were in disarray. He lay sprawled amidst the wisteria petals, surrounded by ink and poetry. This would have been an absolutely beautiful illustration had it not been such a miserable one. The ends of his eyes were stained red, like the lovely colour of rogue flowers pinched from its stem. He had bitten his lips bloody. He sat up slowly and straightened his robes. He'd been a prisoner for such a long time. In the beginning, the pain of captivity had been nigh unbearable. Now his heart was largely numb. I'd never want Chuaning to come back to this point of emotion, and I fear that with Shime, he's gonna be forced through it again. Broken, what could he possibly do? All that remained of his so-called dignity was his insistence on dressing himself after the deed was done. He refused to let anyone help. Meanwhile, Moran sat beside the stone table, poring over those pages of his writings. When he read, "As late spring sheds the colour of high tongue, I remember the bygone warmth of gentle rain." His hand paused for a moment on the words gentle rain. Rieu, his courtesy name. He quickly flipped the page over. Voice mocking, he said, You've rotted to the bone, yet your handwriting is still so neat." He tucked that sheaf of paper into his robes and stood. The breeze whispered over his hems, the gold-embroidered imperial motifs glimmering against the dark fabric. "I'm off." Chuaning said nothing. Moran looked at him askance. His black eyes, framed by the purple blossoms of vines, seemed even darker than usual. "You won't see this venerable one off?" Within the shifting shadows, Chuaning's voice was hoarse. "I taught you this before," said slowly. Moran blinked. "What?" "I hope you may greet these words with a smile, for writing is akin to reuniting." Chuaning finally lifted his lashes to look at the man who stood at the apex of the world. "I taught you how to write it. You're the one who forgot." I don't know why, but Chuaning being petty about this is kind of hitting very hard. I kind of love it. My poor Wanning, I love him so much, and I hate seeing him in pain. It's giving meat bun love seeing him in pain. I don't know what gave me that idea, but yeah. "You taught me how to write it?" Moran knitted his brows. He no longer seemed to be toying with Chuaning. He looked as if he genuinely had no recollection of such a thing. He had meant to leave, but Chuaning's words had stopped him in his tracks. "When?" Watching him, Chuaning said, "A very long time ago." With that, he turned and walked back to Red Lotus's pavilion. Moran stood rooted to the spot, neither leaving while following Chuaning inside. When Chuaning glanced out the window, he saw that Moran had walked back over to the table and was reading the pages left under the paperweight. Chuaning closed the window. After the torment he'd endured, coupled with him not knowing how to clean himself properly afterward, he soon caught a chill. His illness wasn't serious, and he didn't think Moran would have cause to find out. When Liu Gonggong came by, he mentioned Song Chusong had made a bowl of wontons earlier in the day and somehow managed to send Ta Xinjun into a towering rage. I don't know what my petty hatred for Song Chitong is, but somehow her never quite reading Ta Xinjun correctly makes me unreasonably happy, which is very strange considering I don't like Ta Xinjun either. I like Moran. I don't like Ta Xinjun. Not only did he refuse to stay in the Empress's quarters, he had stormed out without touching his dinner. Deep in the night, a heavy rain began to fall, and a servant came to Red Lotus Pavilion. His Majesty has requested that Chu Zongshi rest in the palace tonight. All these retainers were more than aware of the relationship between Moran and Chuaning. They would have to live under a rock not to be aware. I mean, come on. They are not the Chinese censors when they were watching Untamed, Word of Honor, and Spiral, okay? They are probably more awake than that. Yet they still addressed him as Chu Zongshi on Moran's orders. If it wasn't out of some vestigial kindness, then it was out of cruelty. Chuaning felt dreadful. His complexion was wan, and his mood was low. I won't, he said. His Majesty has... I don't care what he has. I'm not going. The servant had little choice but to leave in silence. It was no fun going to bed with someone who was unwell. In the past, Moran had never forced himself on Chuaning when his health was especially poor, but before long, the same servant returned. While Chuaning was beset by fits of coughing, the servant bowed and said flatly, His Majesty has requested that Chu Zongshi wait upon him tonight in Wushan Palace, in sickness or health. Great. We love that for Chuaning. I have seen the next chapter title, and honestly, I don't think I can take more tonight. We might need to scale this to 2 hours, if the rest of this is gonna be this heavy. I just want you guys to be prepared. But the next chapter title is chapter 248, Forgetting, which I wish we could all do. But then again, if we do, none of the character growth that we have achieved will mean anything. Yeah, that was rough, and I think that's just the start. I feel terrified to find out what Shime is capable of, and I just hate that he, much like Ta Xinjun, feels utterly justified in his actions, and yet does not realize how similar he is to Ta Xinjun. 1 hour ErHa, 1 hour fishy. Oh my goodness. That would be hilarious. Unfortunately, I do not yet have volume 4 of Disabled Tyrant's Beloved Pet Fish. So we are just gonna have to stomach this. I have, however... Oh, yes, I do have it here. Something that I'm gonna definitely read now, once we're done here, because I just need a pick-me-up and something to help help me shut off my brain before I go to sleep, and it's this. If, like, this is not, obviously not sponsored or anything like that, but if you're looking for something that's just super wholesome and that heals my heart every single time I read it, highly recommend. But yeah, that's probably what I'm gonna be doing to try and get over the grief that I'm currently feeling for poor running, and that's probably gonna be how I'm gonna survive this volume. We'll see. Let me just quickly see. Shime is crazy. I'm scared of him, but I have to admit I loved him much at the reveal in the beginning, like Moran being, wait, you love Shizun this whole time? I had a suspicion, but I was so determined to not have, like, to be wrong, I guess. But anyway, thank you guys so much for joining me and for your patience with me as we struggle through volume 8 of ErHa. I have to say, like, despite all the pain, reading, like, getting back into reading this, I love how quickly I can read Disabled Tyrant. It just flows so easily, and I think because the topic is a bit lighter, I just go through it a lot quicker as well. But reading this again, going back to Meatbun's writing, she writes so beautifully, even at the most horrible of moments, that I can't help but be in awe of it. So anyway, hope you guys still enjoyed it, and otherwise I'll see you guys. Oh, not next week. Next week, my birthday is on Monday, so there will not be a live stream on Monday. We are doing a movie, and it's a movie that is already up for patrons and members, but it is going to be a normal video going up, maybe premiering. K-pop Demon Hunters. So I hope you guys will enjoy that for that week, and then we will be back with more ErHa the next week. Thank you. Okay, bye guys.